Hey guys, in this rapid review, we're going to talk about one of my most favorite games, Earthworm Jim. One of the weirdest and most memorable video games from the 90s. When this game came out, I was obsessed. I had the action figures, I had posters and magazine cutouts all over my room. I spent tons of hours playing this game. Today, I'm checking out 3 handheld versions: Game Gear, the original Game Boy, and Game Boy Advance. I'm playing all 3 versions on my Analogue Pocket, which I've really been enjoying lately. Each version plays a little differently, so I just wanted to show you the differences real quick and share a few thoughts on one of my favorite games. The original Earthworm Jim came out in 1994. It was made by a company called Shiny Entertainment and published by Playmates Interactive, the same folks who made Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle toys. The character was created by Doug Ten-Nepal, who also did Jim's voice in the game. Instead of starting with a cartoon or comic, they built the franchise around the game first, which was pretty unusual back then. Most video games at the time had serious heroes, simple levels, and the usual goal of saving a princess. Earthworm Jim flipped that idea upside down. You play as a worm in a robotic supersuit, fighting off crazy enemies like Queen Slug for a butt and Professor Monkey for a head. All so you could save Princess What's-Her-Name? Oh wait, that's actually her name. Instead of the typical level themes like grassy fields, icy caves, or forests, Earthworm Jim throws you into bizarre places like giant intestines, junkyards, outer space, and bouncy snot chambers. The game has you doing all sorts of crazy things like launching cows, bungee jumping on strands of snot, fighting evil cats in hell, navigating glass submarines underwater, and escorting a demon puppy in outer space. It's a goofy and unpredictable take on what platformer games usually look like, and that's part of what made it so fun and different. Let's start with the Game Gear version. It looks pretty good for the system, and the controls feel pretty good too. The audio is okay, but some of the sound effects are pretty terrible. I noticed shooting the gun sounds terrible in every port of this game. I haven't finished this one yet, but it's been fun to play through so far. Next up, the original Game Boy. It's got no color, and the graphics are simple, but it still captures Jim's goofy style. I haven't beaten this one either, but it's a solid version considering the hardware. I think this is actually a really good port of the game. I was kind of surprised at how much it felt like the original Sega Genesis version that I was used to. And finally, the Game Boy Advance version, the only one I've played all the way through. It looks the best by far, as it should, with the Game Boy Advance being technically superior to the other systems. I had a great time playing through this version, but unfortunately, the controls kind of ruined it for me. They just felt off, especially in situations where you had to shoot and then quickly jump. There was a delay that made this really frustrating. It was like you had to wait until the shooting animation completely stopped before it would allow you to jump, making some of the fast-paced sections of the game harder than they needed to be. The Game Gear and Game Boy versions don't have this problem, which makes the Game Boy Advance version feel kind of broken in a way. Earthworm Jim was released on a bunch of systems: Sega Genesis, Super Nintendo, Sega CD, Game Boy, Game Gear, Windows 95, and later on Game Boy Advance, mobile phones, and even HD remakes for Xbox and PlayStation. The Sega Genesis version was the original, and won Best Genesis Game of 1994 from Electronic Gaming Monthly. The Sega CD version is often considered the best by many people, but I've never had the pleasure of playing anything on the Sega CD, so I can't say how I feel about that. The Super Nintendo version was also pretty popular. It's missing a couple levels from the Genesis and Sega CD versions, but it was still a big hit. Review scores were strong across the board. Most versions got 8s and 9s out of 10. From magazines like GamePro and EGM, critics praised the animation, humor, and creative level design. Earthworm Jim's handheld versions are a mixed bag. The Game Gear and Game Boy ones are surprisingly decent, while the Game Boy Advance version, even though it looks great, has frustrating issues that make it tough to enjoy sometimes. Earthworm Jim had many sequels, but none of them can top the original in my opinion, and honestly, I think the best way to experience Earthworm Jim is on the Sega Genesis. But no matter which version you play, Earthworm Jim is still one of the weirdest and coolest characters from the 90s. Let me know which version you played growing up, or which one you think is the best today.